The envelope was heavy in my hands, cream-colored and expensive, the kind of paper that whispers promises of good things. My name was written in familiar handwriting, Lucia's looping script that always made me think of our college days, passing notes in the back of lecture halls. I stood on the porch of what should have been my house. My dream house. The one I'd spent 8 years teaching English in Seoul, Bangkok, and Dubai to save for. The one with the blue door and the garden space I'd already mentally filled with herbs and flowers. The one I'd told Lucia about over countless video calls, showing her listings, asking her opinion on neighborhoods while she nodded enthusiastically. "Open it outside," the real estate agent had said, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Ms. Graham thought you might want a moment." Ms. Graham. Lucia Graham. My best friend for 15 years. I tore open the envelope, my fingers trembling slightly. The paper inside was the same heavy stock, folded precisely. "Louisa, I know this will come as a shock. I've purchased the house you were interested in. I want you to know it wasn't planned. When I came to visit the neighborhood last month, I fell in love with it too. When your financing hit that snag, I couldn't bear to see someone else get it. I know you'll understand eventually. This way it stays in the family. We can laugh about this someday, I promise. I've left the keys with Marjorie. The guest room is yours anytime. Love, always. Lucia." The letter crumpled in my fist. My throat tightened as I looked up across the tree-lined street. And there she was. Lucia, standing on the porch of my house, waving like she was welcoming me home. Her blonde hair caught the sunlight, her smile wide and expectant. I forced my face into something resembling normal and waved back, though my hand felt disconnected from my body. "Would you like to go inside?" Marjorie asked, jingling the keys. "Ms. Graham has arranged for the utilities to be on." "No," I said, my voice sounding hollow even to my own ears. "I think I need some time." "Of course." She handed me the keys with a sympathetic look. "Take all the time you need." I nodded, unable to speak further, and walked back to my rental car. I could feel Lucia watching me, probably waiting for me to turn around, to run across the street and hug her, to tell her it was fine, that I understood. I didn't turn around. In the safety of my car, I let my forehead rest against the steering wheel. The leather was cool against my skin, grounding me as my mind raced through the implications. The financing snag had been minor, a 2-week delay at most. Lucia knew that. She'd known everything. My phone buzzed. A text from Lucia. "Are you okay? Come over when you're ready. We should talk." I started the car without responding. The drive to my temporary apartment was a blur, my mind replaying every conversation we'd had about the house. How she'd asked to see the listing, how she'd suggested visiting to help me decide, how she'd been so interested in my mortgage broker's name. It wasn't until I was inside my sterile, rented space that I allowed myself to feel the full force of it. I sank to the floor, back against the door, and finally let the tears come. Not just for the house, though that loss cut deep, but for the friendship I now realized had been built on sand. 8 years of saving, of teaching English to corporate executives and their children, of living in tiny apartments and sending money home, of missing funerals and weddings because I couldn't afford the flights. All for that house. My house. My phone buzzed again. And again. I ignored it, watching the notifications pile up. "Louisa, please talk to me." "It's not what you think. I did this for us." I turned my phone off and stared at the blank wall opposite me. The rage building inside me was unfamiliar, hot and clarifying. I'd always been the understanding one, the one who made peace, who saw the best in people, especially in Lucia. Not anymore. I pulled myself up from the floor and moved to the small desk by the window. Rain had started to fall, pattering against the glass in an irregular rhythm that matched my heartbeat. I opened my laptop and began to type. First, I needed information. About the sale, about property laws, about Lucia's finances, about the neighborhood committee she'd mentioned was so exclusive, about the interior designer, Iris something. She'd bragged about hiring. Then I needed a plan. Because Lucia was right about one thing. This house was going to stay in the family. Just not her family. I opened a new document and titled it, Getting My House Back. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for just a moment before I began to type, each keystroke a tiny act of war. By the time the rain stopped, I had the beginnings of a strategy. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't nice. But then, neither was betrayal. I finally turned my phone back on to find 17 missed calls and a voicemail from Lucia, her voice artificially bright. Lou, I know you're upset, but when you calm down, you'll see this is for the best. Call me when you're ready to be adults about this. Love you. I deleted the voicemail and opened my contacts. It was time to make some calls of my own. Rain pounded against my apartment window as I stared at my phone. 3 days since I discovered Lucia's betrayal, and the calls hadn't stopped. Friends asking why I wasn't returning her messages. Mutual acquaintances wondering if we were still on for dinner next week. As if my world hadn't just imploded, I scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I was looking for. Iris Mitchell. The interior designer Lucia had bragged about hiring. The one with the waiting list a mile long. The one who'd transformed the homes of local celebrities and tech executives. My finger hovered over the call button. This was crossing a line. But then again, so was stealing your best friend's dream house. I pressed call. Iris Mitchell Design. The voice was crisp, professional. Hi, I'd like to speak with Iris, please. It's about the Graham property on Maple Street. A pause. May I ask who's calling? I took a deep breath. Louisa Carter. I'm a close friend of Lucia's. Another pause. One moment. My heart hammered as I waited. This was either going to work or blow up spectacularly. This is Iris. The voice was warmer now, curious. Hi, Iris. I'm calling about the house on Maple Street. Lucia suggested I reach out to you directly about some of the design elements we've been discussing. Oh, surprise colored her voice. Lucia didn't mention a consultant. I laughed lightly, the sound almost convincing. That's Lucia for you, always forgetting the details. We've been planning this house for years, actually. I just got back from overseas. I see. Iris's tone shifted slightly. Well, we're still in the preliminary stages. Perhaps we could meet to discuss your input. I have time tomorrow afternoon. Perfect. Your office at 2? See you then. I ended the call and let out the breath I'd been holding. Step 1. Infiltrate. My hands shook as I wrote the appointment in my planner. This wasn't me, scheming, lying. But the alternative was accepting defeat, and I'd spent too many years fighting for this dream. My phone buzzed with a text from Aiden. How are you holding up? Aiden. My rock through every crisis since college. The one person who knew exactly how much the house meant to me. Not great. Can you meet for coffee? His response was immediate. Corner cafe. 30 Mint. The cafe was busy with the afternoon crowd, but Aiden had secured our usual corner table. He stood when he saw me, his tall frame unfolding as he pulled me into a hug. You look terrible, he said, but his eyes were kind. Thanks. I managed a weak smile as I slid into my seat. That's exactly what a girl wants to hear. He pushed a mug toward me. Already ordered your usual. The familiar scent of chai tea rose in a comforting cloud. You're a lifesaver. So? He said after I'd taken a few sips. What's the plan? I raised an eyebrow. Who says I have a plan? I've known you for 12 years, Lou. You always have a plan. I sighed and leaned forward. I'm meeting with her interior designer tomorrow, pretending to be a consultant. Aiden's eyes widened. That's bold. It's just the beginning. I pulled out my notebook and slid it across the table. I've been doing research. He flipped through the pages, his expression growing more concerned with each turn. Lou, some of this looking into zoning violations is one thing, but hacking her email? Not hacking, I corrected. Eric from IT said he could help me recover some of our old conversations, ones where she specifically acknowledged the house was my dream, not hers. And what exactly will that prove? I stared into my tea. I don't know yet, but it's something. Aiden closed the notebook. Have you tried just talking to her? Maybe there's an explanation. An explanation for buying the house out from under me? My voice rose, drawing glances from nearby tables. I lowered it to a harsh whisper. She knew what she was doing, Aiden. This wasn't a misunderstanding. He reached across the table and took my hand. I'm on your side. Always. I just don't want to see you become someone you're not because of this. Maybe I need to become someone else, I said quietly. Someone who doesn't get walked all over. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Iris. Something's come up. Need to reschedule our meeting. Also, Lucia mentioned you might be reaching out. Said there was some confusion about the property. Let's clear that up when we meet. My stomach dropped. She knows. Who knows what? Aiden asked. I showed him the text. Lucia must have called her. She's on to me. Aiden squeezed my hand. So, change tactics. You don't need to be sneaky about this. Don't I? I pulled my hand away. Because being honest and straightforward has worked so well for me so far. As if on cue, the cafe door opened and Lucia walked in. She was wearing a cream-colored coat I'd helped her pick out last winter, her blonde hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. She scanned the room, and when her eyes landed on our table, her face lit up with that familiar smile, the one that had always made me feel like the most important person in her world. Lou! She called, weaving between tables toward us. Thank God! I've been trying to reach you for days. I felt Aiden tense beside me, ready to intervene if needed. But this was my battle. I've been busy, I said, my voice steady despite the rage boiling just beneath the surface. House hunting, her smile faltered. About that, we really need to talk. Do we? I stood, gathering my things. Because I think you've said everything that matters in that letter. Lou, please! The house was everything to me, Lucia. You knew that. She reached for my arm. That's why I did it. I couldn't let you make such a huge mistake. The foundation is cracked, Lou. The inspection report. I froze. What inspection report? Something flickered across her face. Triumph? Relief? The one you never bothered to read. That's what I've been trying to tell you. What inspection report? I repeated, my voice hollow. Lucia pulled a folded document from her purse and placed it on the table between us. The paper was creased from multiple readings, coffee-stained at one corner. The one your inspector filed 3 weeks ago, she said. The one that shows the foundation is compromised. The one that estimates repairs at nearly $100,000. I stared at the document, my name clearly printed at the top. I never saw this. Your real estate agent was supposed to give it to you. Lucia's voice softened. When I realized you were still moving forward, I knew you hadn't seen it. I couldn't let you sink your life savings into a money pit. Aiden reached for the report, scanning it with a frown. This looks legitimate, Lou. My head was spinning. So you bought a house with a cracked foundation? That makes no sense. I have the money to fix it. You don't. Lucia slid into the chair across from me. I was trying to protect you. By going behind my back? The words tasted bitter. By not telling me what you found? I tried. I called you the day I saw this. You were in Dubai, remember? The connection was terrible, and you were so excited about finalizing the deal. She sighed. I made a split-second decision. Maybe it was wrong, but my intentions. Stop. I held up my hand. Just stop. The cafe seemed too small suddenly, the air too thick. I needed to think, and I couldn't do it with Lucia's earnest eyes on me, with Aiden's concerned glances. I need to verify this, I said finally. I need to talk to my agent. Of course. Lucia nodded eagerly. And then we can figure this out together. The house can still be yours eventually. Maybe we co-own until the repairs are done, or... I said I need to verify it. I stood abruptly. Aiden, can you... I'll drive you home, he said, understanding immediately. Lucia reached for my hand. Lou, please don't shut me out. Not again. Again. The word hung between us, heavy with history. The 6 months after my mother died, when I disappeared into grief, ignoring her calls. The year in Seoul, when I'd been too busy building my new life to maintain our weekly video chats. "I'll call you," I said, not meeting her eyes. "After I talked to my agent." Marjorie's office was exactly what you'd expect from a successful real estate agent. Tasteful, expensive, designed to convey trust and competence. She greeted me with a practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Louisa, what a lovely surprise." "Not really a surprise," I said, placing the inspection report on her desk. "I called and made an appointment." Her eyes flicked to the document, then back to my face. "What can I help you with today? You can explain why I never saw this report. The one that shows the house I was about to buy needs $100,000 in foundation repairs." Marjorie's smile didn't waver. "I sent that report to you 3 weeks ago, by email and certified mail." "I never received either." "Well, that's concerning." She turned to her computer, tapping keys with manicured nails. "Let me check. Yes, here's the email, sent on the 15th. And I have confirmation the letter was delivered to your apartment building on the 17th. My apartment building, where packages routinely disappeared, where the mail system was notoriously unreliable. "Show me the email," I demanded. She turned the screen toward me. There it was, sent to my personal email, not the work address I'd been using for all our communications. "You sent it to the wrong email," I said, my voice tight. "We've been using my work email for everything." A flicker of genuine concern crossed her face. I'm so sorry. I must have used the address from your initial inquiry." "And you never followed up? Never called to confirm I'd received it? For a report this serious?" Marjorie's professional veneer cracked slightly. "I assumed when you continued with the purchase that you decided to handle the repairs yourself. Many buyers do." "Many buyers with an extra $100,000 lying around?" I laughed bitterly. "Did Lucia Graham see this report?" Her hesitation told me everything. "How?" I pressed. "How did she get access to my inspection report?" Marjorie shifted uncomfortably. "Ms. Graham is a long-time client. When she expressed interest in the property, I may have mentioned the inspection findings. In general terms, of course." "In general terms," I repeated. "And then she made an all-cash offer, knowing I'd hit a financing delay. I can't discuss another client's transaction details." I stood, gathering the report. "You won't have to. I'll be filing a complaint with the Real Estate Commission. Expect to hear from them." I sat in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to process what I'd learned. Marjorie had screwed up. The house really did have serious issues. And Lucia had still gone behind my back, had still made decisions about my life without consulting me, had still taken something that was mine. My phone buzzed with a text from Aiden. "Any news?" I started typing, then stopped. What could I say? That Lucia might have been trying to help? That I'd spent days plotting revenge against someone who thought she was protecting me? Another text came through, this one from Lucia. "Whatever Marjorie told you, remember she's covering her own mistakes. Call me when you're ready to talk about solutions." Solutions? As if this were a simple problem to solve, not a fundamental breach of trust. I started the car and headed toward the one place I needed to see for myself. The house on Maple Street. My house. Lucia's house. The house with the cracked foundation. As I turned onto the street, I spotted a familiar figure on the front porch. Not Lucia, but Iris Mitchell, the interior designer. She was examining the front door, making notes on a tablet. I parked across the street and watched her work, an idea forming. Maybe I didn't need to fight Lucia for a flawed house. Maybe what I needed was leverage, something to ensure she never blindsided me again. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in years. "Milena, it's Louisa. I need your advice." Milena's apartment hadn't changed in the 5 years since I'd last visited. Books still lined every wall, plants crowded the windows, and the scent of cardamom and cloves hung in the air. My former English professor sat across from me, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a loose bun, her dark eyes studying me over reading glasses. "So," she said, setting down her teacup, "you want to use what you know about this designer to—" "What exactly?" I shifted uncomfortably under her gaze. "Not blackmail, just leverage." "Louisa." My name in her mouth sounded like disappointment. "I know how it sounds," I admitted. But Lucia crossed a line. She went behind my back, made decisions about my life without consulting me. "Like you're planning to do to her?" The question hit like a slap. I stared into my tea, watching the leaves swirl at the bottom of the cup. "It's different," I said finally. "Yea, is it?" Milena leaned forward. "When you came to me all those years ago, desperate to escape your life here, what did I tell you?" "That running away doesn't solve problems," I recited. "It just changes the scenery. And revenge doesn't heal betrayal. It just gives you something to focus on besides the pain." I set my cup down with more force than necessary. "So I'm just supposed to accept what she did? Let her keep the house?" I didn't say that." Milena's voice softened. "But there's a difference between standing up for yourself and becoming the thing that hurt you." My phone buzzed. Another text from Lucia. I ignored it. "What would you do?" I asked. Milena considered this. "I'd start by having an honest conversation. Not about the house, but about the friendship. Because this isn't really about property, is it?" The truth of her words settled heavily in my chest. This wasn't just about the house. It was about years of feeling second best to Lucia's needs, about the pattern of her making decisions for my own good without consulting me. "And if the conversation doesn't work," I asked, "then you decide what matters more, winning or keeping your integrity." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Now, tell me about this interior designer. What makes you think she has secrets worth leveraging?" I parked down the street from Iris's office the next morning, watching as she unlocked the front door. My conversation with Milena had left me conflicted, but I wasn't ready to abandon my plan entirely. Not yet. Iris's design firm occupied a converted Victorian in the Arts District. Through the large front windows, I could see her moving around, setting up for the day. I checked my watch, 15 minutes until her first appointment, according to the schedule Eric had helped me access. My phone rang. "Aiden." "Where are you?" he asked when I answered. "I stopped by your apartment." "Following up on something," I said vaguely. "Something or someone?" His tone was knowing. "Lou, tell me you're not stalking Iris Mitchell." "Not stalking, observing," he sighed. "This isn't you. The Lou I know doesn't lurk in cars watching people." "Maybe you don't know me as well as you think." The words came out sharper than intended. "Maybe I don't," he agreed quietly. "The Lou I know values honesty above all else. The Lou I know would confront problems head-on, not scheme around them. The Lou you know got her dream house stolen by her best friend. And that sucks. It really does. But this path you're on, it leads somewhere dark, Lou." I watched as a client entered Iris's office, a tall woman with a designer handbag and confident stride. "I have to go." "Lou!" I ended the call and got out of my car. It was now or never. The bell above the door chimed as I entered the design studio. Iris looked up from her desk, recognition flickering across her face. "Louisa," she said, her tone carefully neutral, "I wasn't expecting you." "I was hoping we could talk." I glanced at the client, who was browsing fabric samples. "Privately." Iris hesitated, then nodded. "Jenny, would you mind giving us a moment? Help yourself to coffee in the back room." Once we were alone, Iris gestured to a chair. "I assume this is about the Maple Street property." "Indirectly." I sat, maintaining eye contact. "It's about your business practices." Her expression hardened. "Excuse me?" "3 years ago, you were involved in a lawsuit with a client named Darren. He claimed you were taking kickbacks from contractors, inflating their bids and pocketing the difference." Iris's face paled slightly. That case was dismissed because Darren couldn't afford to continue, not because you were innocent. I leaned forward. I have copies of emails between you and Premier Construction discussing your consulting fees. Where did you get those? Her voice was barely above a whisper. Does it matter? I kept my tone even, though my heart was racing. What matters is that the licensing board would find them very interesting. Iris stood abruptly, moving to close the blinds on the front windows. When she turned back to me, her composure had returned. What do you want? The question hung between us. What did I want? Revenge? The house? Or something else entirely? I want you to drop Lucia as a client, I said finally, and I want information. Information about what? About why she really bought that house. Because I don't believe it was to protect me from a bad investment. Iris studied me for a long moment. You two have been friends for how long? 15 years? And you're willing to threaten me, potentially ruin my career, to get back at her? Put that way, it sounded petty, vindictive, not like me at all. I'm willing to do what it takes to understand what happened, I amended, and to make sure it never happens again. Iris sank back into her chair. Lucia came to me 6 months ago, long before you had an offer on the house. 6 months! My mind raced. That's impossible. I only found the listing 3 months ago. She knew about it before it was listed. She's been planning to buy that house for a while, Louisa. Iris hesitated. And it has nothing to do with the foundation. The room seemed to tilt slightly. Then why? That's something you need to ask her. Iris reached for her phone. Now, are you going to report me, or can we both agree this conversation never happened? I stood on shaky legs. I need to think. As I reached the door, Iris called after me. For what it's worth, I think you're asking the right questions, just not in the right way. Outside, I leaned against my car, struggling to breathe. 6 months. Lucia had known about the house for 6 months, before I'd even found it, before there was any inspection report. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk about Lucia. Meet me at Riverfront Park, North Entrance, 3 p.m. Eric's. Riverfront Park was crowded with afternoon joggers and parents pushing strollers. I scanned the north entrance, spotting Eric on a bench overlooking the water. His lanky frame was hunched over a laptop, dark hair falling across his forehead as he typed. This is cryptic, even for IT guys, I said, sitting beside him. Eric glanced up, his eyes darting nervously around us before returning to his screen. I found something you should see. About Lucia? He nodded, angling the laptop toward me. I recovered those emails you asked for, but I found something else, something weird. The screen showed a series of email exchanges between Lucia and someone named Marcus. I skimmed the first few messages, my confusion growing. Who's Marcus? Property developer, specializes in historic renovations. Eric pointed to a line in one of the emails. See this? They're discussing the Maple Street house, from 8 months ago. My stomach clenched. 8 months? That's... Before it was even listed for sale. Before you ever mentioned it to her. Eric scrolled down. And look at this one. The email was dated just 2 weeks ago. Lucia. The City Council approved the rezoning request yesterday. Once we secure the remaining properties on the block, we can move forward with the development plan. Your investment in 1422, Maple puts us at 80% ownership of the target area. The foundation issue is a blessing in disguise. It gives us legitimate grounds to demolish rather than preserve. Congratulations on your foresight. This will be the development deal of the decade. Marcus. I read it twice, my hands growing cold. She's planning to tear it down? For some development project? Eric nodded grimly. The whole block, eventually. Look at the attachment. He opened a PDF. Architectural renderings of a modern mixed-use complex. Retail spaces on the ground floor. Luxury apartments above. Where my house, where the entire historic neighborhood, currently stood. She lied, I whispered. About everything. There's more. Eric hesitated, She's been monitoring your emails. That's why I wanted to meet in person. The world seemed to tilt beneath me. What? There's a forwarding rule on your personal account. Everything gets copied to an address I traced back to her. It's been active for at least a year. A year? Every email I'd sent or received, every conversation about the house, about my plans, about my finances. Why would she? I couldn't finish the question. Eric closed his laptop. Money, the development plan mentions expected returns of 300% for early investors. I stood abruptly, needing to move, to breathe. I have to go. Louisa, wait. Eric caught my arm. There's something else you should know. She's not doing this alone. There are other investors. Who? His eyes met mine. Aiden's name is on the investor list. I drove aimlessly for hours, my mind racing. Aiden, my rock, my confidant, the person I trusted most after Lucia, both betraying me. Night had fallen by the time I found myself outside Aiden's apartment building. Lights glowed warmly behind his third-floor windows. I sat in my car, watching shadows move across the blinds. Was he alone? Was Lucia there? Were they laughing about how easily I'd been manipulated? My phone buzzed with a text from him. I know you're outside. Come up. Of course he knew. He probably had my phone tracked too. The elevator ride to his floor felt endless. Each step down the hallway required conscious effort. When I knocked, the door opened immediately. Aiden stood there, concern etched on his face. Lou, what's going on? You've been sitting outside for 20 minutes. I pushed past him into the apartment. Tell me about the development project. He froze, color draining from his face. What? Don't. My voice shook with rage. Don't pretend you don't know what I'm talking about. The project that's going to tear down my house, the whole neighborhood, the one you and Lucia invested in. Aiden closed the door slowly. How did you find out? Does it matter? You lied to me, both of you. It's not what you think. He moved toward me, hands raised placatingly. Then what is it? I demanded. Explain how my two closest friends conspired behind my back to destroy my dream. We were trying to protect you. The words burst from him. That neighborhood is dying, Lou. The development is inevitable. We wanted to make sure you didn't sink your life savings into a house that would be worthless in 2 years. So you decided to profit from it instead? Without telling me? I wanted to tell you. He ran a hand through his hair. Lucia thought it would be better to wait until after. After what? After you'd secured all the properties? After demolition began? I laughed bitterly. When exactly was the right time to mention you were destroying my dream house? Aiden sank onto the couch. It's complicated, Lou. It's really not. I remained standing, needing the physical advantage. You chose money over honesty, over me. That's not fair. He looked up, his eyes pleading. I invested because Lucia convinced me it was the only way to ensure you got something out of this. The returns would have more than paid for a better house in a better neighborhood. But it wasn't your decision to make. The words tore from my throat. It was mine. My life. My choice. My dream. Lou? No. I stepped back. I trusted you, both of you, and you treated me like a child who couldn't make her own decisions. We were trying to help. By lying, by spying on my emails, by manipulating me. Each question felt like ripping off a bandage, exposing raw wounds beneath. That's not help, Aiden. That's control. He stood, reaching for me. Please, just listen. I backed away. I'm done listening to lies. As I turned to leave, he called after me. What are you going to do? I paused at the door, a cold clarity settling over me. What I should have done from the beginning, fight back. Outside, my phone rang. Lucia. I answered with steady hands. We need to talk, she said without preamble. I know you've been digging. It's time you heard the whole truth. Fine, I replied. Tomorrow, at the house, noon. Lou! And Lucia? Bring the property documents. All of them. I didn't sleep. Instead, I spread documents across my apartment floor. Emails Eric had recovered. property records I'd requested from the county clerk, zoning applications filed under Marcus's development company. By dawn, I had a clearer picture of what I was facing, a meticulously planned project with powerful backers and millions at stake. And at the center of it all, Lucia, my best friend. My phone buzzed with a text from Milena. Whatever you're planning for today, remember who you are. Who was I? The question echoed as I showered and dressed. The person I'd been a week ago, trusting, forgiving, conflict avoidant, seemed like a stranger now. That Louisa would never confront her best friend. That Louisa would swallow her hurt and move on. But that Louisa didn't know what betrayal really felt like. I arrived at the house 30 minutes early, parking across the street to gather my thoughts. The blue door that had once represented my future now seemed to mock me. I'd imagined myself walking through it thousands of times, coming home to a place that was truly mine. A taxi pulled up, and Stephen stepped out. My stomach dropped. Stephen, the fellow English teacher I'd met in Bangkok 3 years ago. The one who'd followed his own betrayal to a dark place I'd promised myself I'd never go. "What are you doing here?" I asked as he approached my car. He leaned down to the window, his familiar crooked smile not reaching his eyes. "Aiden called me, said you might need a friend who understands." "Aiden has no right to be worried about you." Stephen opened my car door. "Come on, let's walk." Reluctantly, I joined him on the sidewalk. We strolled in silence for a minute before he spoke again. "Remember what I told you in Bangkok about my business partner?" I nodded. Stephen's partner had stolen his investment, leaving him bankrupt and stranded in Thailand. "I spent 2 years plotting revenge," he continued. "Followed him to Singapore, gathered dirt, nearly destroyed his new business." He stopped walking, turning to face me. "Want to know what I got for all that effort?" "Justice," I suggested. An ulcer, depression, and the realization that I'd wasted 2 years of my life on someone who'd forgotten about me within months. His eyes held mine. "Revenge is a poison you drink yourself, Lou." "This isn't about revenge," I insisted. "It's about standing up for myself." "Is it?" Stephen glanced toward the house. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're about to burn down your life to spite Lucia." "She betrayed me." "Yes, she did." He nodded. "And that's on her. What you do next, that's on you." A sleek black car pulled up to the house. Lucia stepped out, dressed impeccably as always, a portfolio tucked under her arm. She spotted us and hesitated before walking to the front door. "I have to do this," I said. Stephen squeezed my shoulder. "Just remember, there's a difference between confronting someone and destroying them. One leaves room for you to heal. The other," he shook his head, "the other leaves nothing but ashes." He walked away, leaving me alone with his words echoing in my mind. I took a deep breath and crossed the street. Lucia opened the door before I could knock. The house smelled of fresh paint and new carpeting. Renovations had already begun. "You're early," she said, stepping aside to let me in. "So are you." We stood awkwardly in the entryway, 15 years of friendship suddenly insufficient for this moment. "I brought the documents," she finally said, gesturing to the portfolio on a small table. "Everything about the development project." I moved past her into what would have been the living room. The space was empty except for 2 folding chairs facing each other. "Expecting a showdown?" I asked, nodding toward the chairs. "Expecting a conversation." Lucia remained by the door. "One that's long overdue." I sat, crossing my arms. "So talk." She joined me, placing the portfolio between us. "First, I want to say I'm sorry. Not for buying the house. I still believe that was the right call, but for how I did it, for not being honest with you." "Why?" The question contained multitudes. Why lie? Why betray me? Why this house? The development project started a year ago. Marcus approached me about investing. He needed someone with connections to local property owners. She opened the portfolio, revealing maps and plans. "This neighborhood is prime real estate, Lou. The returns will be astronomical." And that justifies lying to me? No. She met my gaze directly. Nothing justifies that. But when you told me you were interested in this specific house, she sighed. I panicked. We already had commitments from most of the block. This was the last property we needed. So you bought it out from under me. I tried to steer you toward other neighborhoods first. Remember those listings I sent? The ones you dismissed without even looking? I did remember. I'd been so fixated on this house, this street. The foundation issues are real, she continued. That wasn't a lie. But yes, we plan to demolish and rebuild regardless. And monitoring my emails? Was that part of your protection too? Lucia flinched. That was Marcus's idea. After you mentioned looking at properties in this area, I should have said no. But you didn't. The betrayal still stung, sharp and fresh. You invaded my privacy, you and Aiden both. Aiden didn't know about the emails, she said quickly. He only invested because I convinced him it would help you in the long run. I laughed bitterly. Everyone making decisions about my life except me. I know how it looks. Do you? I stood, unable to remain still. Do you know what it's like to discover the two people you trust most have been manipulating you? Planning to profit from your disappointment? That's not fair. None of this is fair, my voice echoed in the empty room. I spent 8 years, Lucia, saving for this, working jobs I hated in countries where I knew no one, missing funerals and weddings and birthdays, all for this house. And you would have lost everything when the development went through. She stood to face me. The neighborhood would have changed around you. Property values would have plummeted during construction, then skyrocketed beyond what you could afford in taxes. That should have been my choice to make. You're right. The admission seemed to deflate her. You're right. And I was wrong. I thought I was protecting you, but I was controlling you. Just like my mother, I finished. The realization hit like a physical blow. You became exactly what I was trying to escape. Lucia winced. I never meant to. But you did. I moved to the window, looking out at the street. So what now? The development moves forward? You get rich, and I get what? Your apology? You get this. She pulled a document from the portfolio and held it out. 20% of my investment share. It's already done. The paperwork was filed yesterday. I stared at the document without taking it. You think you can buy me off? I think I can make this right. Her voice cracked slightly. I think I can give you a future instead of a money pit. The returns on this investment will buy you any house you want, Lou. A better one. It was never about the house itself. My throat tightened. It was about having something that was mine, something no one could take away. I know. Lucia set the document on the chair. And I took that from you. I can't undo it, but I can try to make amends. The front door opened before I could respond. Aiden's voice called from the entryway. Lou? Lucia? We need to talk. He appeared in the doorway, his expression grim. Marcus is on his way, with the demolition permits. Lucia paled. That's impossible. The community review period doesn't end for another month. He expedited it. Aiden looked at me. I'm sorry, Lou. I just found out. They're starting demolition tomorrow. Tomorrow. The word echoed in my head as I looked around the room that should have been my living room, in the house that should have been my home. So that's it? I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. Game over? Not necessarily. Aiden stepped fully into the room. There's still one option left, but it's risky. What option? Lucia and I asked simultaneously. The historical preservation clause. His eyes met mine. The one you found in the original deed. The historical preservation clause? Lucia stared at Aiden. What are you talking about? I moved to the window, heart pounding. It was in the original property records. A covenant from 1923 stating that the house cannot be demolished due to its historical significance. That's impossible, Lucia shook her head. Marcus's team would have found it. They did. Aiden pulled out his phone, showing us an email. They found it and buried it. I discovered it when I was reviewing the title documents last night. Outside, a black SUV pulled up to the curb. A tall man in an expensive suit stepped out, followed by two others carrying briefcases. "Marcus," Lucia whispered. "We don't have much time," Aiden said urgently. "Lou, do you still have those property records you requested?" I nodded, pulling folded papers from my bag. "The original deed and covenant. But will it be enough? They clearly have connections at the city." "It will be if we can get it to the right people before demolition starts." Aiden took the papers, scanning them quickly. "The Historical Preservation Society has an emergency injunction process specifically for situations like this." Lucia grabbed her phone. "I'll call my lawyer." "Your lawyer works for Marcus," I reminded her. She paused, then nodded. "You're right. We need someone independent." The front door opened. Heavy footsteps approached. "Ladies!" Marcus's voice was smooth as oil as he entered the room. "I see Aiden's joined our little gathering. How convenient." He was taller than I'd expected, with silver hair and the confident stance of someone used to getting his way. The two men flanking him remained silent, watchful. "Marcus!" Lucia stepped forward. "We need to talk about the demolition schedule." "Nothing to discuss." He smiled thinly. "Permits are approved. Work begins tomorrow at 8 a.m. "There's a problem with that plan," I said, finding my voice. "This house is protected by a historical covenant." Marcus's smile didn't waver. "That old thing? It was invalidated years ago. The paperwork's already been processed." "Invalidated how?" Aiden challenged. "The covenant requires approval from the Historical Society Board to be overturned. There's no record of that happening." A flicker of annoyance crossed Marcus's face. "These technical details are hardly worth discussing. The project is moving forward." "Not if we file an emergency injunction," I said, meeting his gaze steadily. "And who exactly is we?" Marcus looked between us. "Lucia is my business partner. Aiden is an investor. And you?" His eyes narrowed. "You have no standing whatsoever." "Actually," Lucia interrupted, "I've transferred 20% of my shares to Louisa. She's an investor now, too." Marcus's composure slipped momentarily. "You did what?" "It's done," she said firmly. "Paperwork filed yesterday." "That's a breach of our agreement." His voice hardened. "Sue me." Lucia moved to stand beside me. "But the demolition isn't happening tomorrow." Marcus studied us, calculating. "This is disappointing, Lucia. I thought you understood what was at stake." He turned to one of his associates. "Call Judge Wilson. Tell him we need to discuss the Maple Street project." My stomach dropped. Of course he had a judge in his pocket. "While you're making calls," Aiden said, holding up his phone, "you should know I'm on with Diane from the Tribune. She's very interested in how demolition permits for a historically protected property were expedited through the system." Marcus's face darkened. "You're bluffing." "Want to find out?" Aiden put the phone on speaker. "Diane, you still there?" "Yes," a woman's voice replied. "And I'm recording, Mr. Davis. You were saying about the Maple Street Historical Covenant?" The room fell silent. Marcus stared at Aiden, then at me, then at Lucia. "This isn't over," he said finally. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." "Actually," I stepped forward, "I think we do. A developer willing to falsify documents, bribe officials, and bully property owners to get what he wants." "You can't prove any of that." "We don't have to." I gestured to Aiden's phone. "We just have to raise enough questions to trigger an investigation. How many city officials were expediting permits for you, Marcus? How many judges?" His jaw tightened. "You're making a mistake." "No," Lucia said quietly. "The mistake was thinking we could build something worthwhile by destroying what matters to people." Marcus turned to her, betrayal flashing in his eyes. "After everything I've done for you, you've done nothing for me," she cut him off. "You used me for my connections. just like I used Louisa for her trust. We were both wrong. He stared at her for a long moment, then at me. Fine. Have your little victory today. But remember, people like me always win in the end. With that, he turned and stalked out, his associates hurrying after him. As the front door slammed, my knees nearly buckled. Aiden ended the call and caught my arm. You okay? I nodded, though I wasn't sure if it was true. Did we just win? For now, he said. But he's right. This isn't over. What happens next? I asked, looking between them. Lucia picked up the property documents from the chair. We file these with the Historical Society, get that emergency injunction, and then, she hesitated, then we figure out what to do with this house. We? I raised an eyebrow. If you'll let me help, she said softly. I know I don't deserve it. The anger I'd been nursing for days still burned, but alongside it was something else, a strange sense of clarity. Standing up to Marcus had felt right in a way that plotting revenge never had. The foundation still needs fixing, I said finally. I know a guy, Aiden offered. Honest work, fair prices. I moved to the window again, looking out at the street. The house across the way, the one Lucia had been watching me from that first day, now seemed like part of another life. I need to think, I said, about all of this. Of course. Lucia gathered her things. Take all the time you need. As they turned to leave, I called after them. Wait! They paused, looking back expectantly. The Historical Covenant, I said. It doesn't just protect this house, it covers the entire block. Understanding dawned on their faces. The whole development, Aiden breathed. It can't happen, not the way Marcus planned. No, I agreed. It can't. For the first time in days, I felt something like hope unfurling in my chest. Not because I'd won, but because I'd found my voice, my power. I think, I said slowly, we need to call a neighborhood meeting. The community center buzzed with voices as I stood at the podium, surveying the packed room. Every chair was filled, with people lining the walls and spilling into the hallway. Neighbors who'd never spoken were now deep in conversation, united by a common threat. Thank you all for coming, I began, my voice steadier than I felt. As you know, we've called this meeting to discuss the future of our neighborhood. From the front row, Iris gave me an encouraging nod. Beside her sat Milena, who'd helped organize this gathering, reaching out to her network of local activists and historians. Aiden stood at the back, arms crossed, watching the crowd's reactions. Lucia was conspicuously absent. 3 days ago, we obtained an emergency injunction, stopping the demolition of properties on Maple Street. I continued. But that's just a temporary measure. Marcus and his development company will fight back. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Everyone knew Marcus's reputation, his connections. What they don't know, I said, pulling out a folder, is that we have options they never considered. I outlined the plan we'd developed. A community land trust that would purchase properties from willing sellers at fair market value, preserving the historic character while allowing for sensible renovations and improvements. The Historical Covenant would be our legal foundation, but community ownership would be our strength. This isn't just about stopping a developer, I explained. It's about taking control of our neighborhood's future. Questions came rapid fire. How would it be funded? Who would manage the trust? What about homeowners who wanted to sell? I answered each one, drawing on research I'd done with Milena and the legal framework Aiden had helped develop. With each response, I felt more certain, more in command. This was what I'd been searching for all along, not just a house, but a home. A place where I belonged, where my voice mattered. As the meeting wound down, people approached with offers of help, expertise, and funding. A local attorney volunteered legal services. A retired architect offered to assess properties. A group of young professionals pledged to create a website and social media campaign. You did good, Milena said, squeezing my arm as the crowd thinned. I'm proud of you. I couldn't have done it without you, I replied. Any of you. Actually, you could have. Aiden joined us. That's what you never realized, Lou. You've always had this in you. I was about to respond when the community center door opened and Lucia walked in. The room quieted immediately, all eyes turning toward her. She looked different, less polished, more authentic. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, her usual designer clothes replaced by jeans and a sweater. Sorry I'm late, she said, approaching slowly. I had something to finish. I met her halfway. I didn't think you were coming. I almost didn't. She handed me an envelope. But you needed to see this. Inside was a legal document, a deed transfer, for the house on Maple Street. My name was listed as the new owner. I don't understand, I said, looking up at her. It's yours, she explained. No strings attached. I've signed it over to you completely. But the foundation is being repaired, she smiled faintly. Consider it part of my apology. The room had emptied now, leaving just the two of us in the center, Aiden and Milena watching from a respectful distance. Why? I asked simply. Because you were right. Lucia's composure cracked slightly. About all of it. I convinced myself I was protecting you, but I was controlling you, just like my mother, I finished. And yours, she added quietly. We both grew up with mothers who thought they knew best, who made our decisions for us. I swore I'd never be like that, and then I became exactly what I hated. The revelation hit me with unexpected force. Lucia's controlling mother had been a constant topic during our college years. How different she was from my own passive, distant one. Yet somehow we'd both ended up in the same pattern. The house is just a house, Lou, she continued. What matters is that you get to decide what happens to it. Renovation, demolition, selling it to the land trust, whatever you choose. And Marcus? We'll have to find another project. A hint of her old confidence returned. I've withdrawn my investment, and I've provided some interesting documents to the district attorney about his permitting practices. I stared at the deed in my hands, emotions swirling. This was what I'd wanted. My house, my choice. Yet it felt different now. I don't know if I can forgive you yet, I said honestly. I know, she nodded. I'm not asking for that. Just for the chance to earn back your trust someday. She turned to leave, but I caught her arm. The neighborhood meeting next week, I said. We could use someone with your financial expertise. If you're interested. A careful smile. I'll be there. After she left, I walked to the window, watching as she crossed the parking lot. Aiden joined me, his reflection appearing beside mine in the glass. You okay? He asked. Getting there. I tapped the deed against my palm. I own a house. With a cracked foundation, he reminded me. Don't we all? I said, and he laughed. Outside, the sun was setting over the neighborhood. My neighborhood. The houses stood solid against the darkening sky, each with its own history, its own stories. Including mine now. I folded the deed and placed it in my bag. Tomorrow, I'd file the paperwork, make it official. Tomorrow, I'd start planning the repairs, the renovations, the future. But tonight, I just wanted to stand here and breathe, feeling the weight of ownership, not just of a house, but of my choices, my path forward. Ready to go home? Aiden asked. I nodded, suddenly certain. Yes, but not to the blue house, not yet. Some dreams change shape when you hold them in your hands. Some foundations need more than concrete to be truly solid, and some houses become homes only after you've fought for them, not against others, but against the parts of yourself that settled for less than you deserved.
During my husband's funeral, my son-in-law Andrew leaned close and whispered chillingly, I'm going to finally be rid of that old hag in the mountains. His words, spoken quietly beside my husband's grave, were meant for my ears alone. As I glanced at him, I caught the malevolent grin spreading across his face. He seemed almost gleeful as he proclaimed, "Now that he's gone, the company is rightfully mine." Until then, Andrew had been a contender for the company's presidency, a role my late husband had excelled in as CEO. His ambition was now clear, his darker intentions laid bare. But life has a way of complicating the best-laid plans, and I, Eleanor, a 59-year-old housewife who had been married to my husband, Jackson, for 33 blissful years, knew it was not going to be straightforward. Standing by my husband's altar, a silent vow hardened within me. It was time to show Andrew that he had underestimated me. "Grant me strength," I silently implored, the battle lines drawn in my heart. My life with Jackson had been one of partnership and creativity. We met as co-workers, grew into friends, then lovers, and finally partners in both marriage and business. Just a year after our wedding, we welcomed our daughter Sarah into the world. When Jackson was 37, fueled by a passion for design and architecture, he took the bold step of starting his own company. Despite the uncertainties, given our daughter was only 4 at the time, I threw my full support behind him. "Let's make your dream a reality together," I had said, embracing his vision as my own. Over the years, as the company flourished, so did our commitment to each other. Andrew, initially a diligent worker from an affiliated company, became part of our family when he married Sarah. His hardworking nature won him a place by my husband's side in the business. However, Sarah often expressed her discomfort about him, feelings I had dismissed but now wished I had heeded. Andrew's true nature, once hidden beneath a facade of loyalty and support, was now a threat not just to my family's legacy, but to the very values Jackson and I had cherished and built our lives upon. As I stood by the altar, the resolve to protect what Jackson and I had created grew stronger. It was time to stand up, not just for my family, but for the dreams and aspirations that had defined our lives. The battle for the soul of our company and our family had just begun. Andrew's enthusiasm for his work was evident, perhaps excessively so. "Mom," my daughter once confided to me, a hint of worry coloring her tone lately, "I've been concerned about Andrew." "Oh, what's on your mind?" "Well, he might have been drinking, but he said something awful. He wished that Dad would just go away so he could boost the company's profits himself." Hearing such harsh words shook me. It's often said that alcohol reveals hidden truths, but I struggled to align this image with the man who had always pledged loyalty to my husband. Despite my daughter's concerns, I tried to believe that Andrew was ultimately focused on the welfare of the company. However, understanding his true intentions was challenging. A year prior, a distressing turn of events unfolded. My husband, Jackson, who had always been the picture of health, began showing worrying signs. His lack of appetite and persistent back pain urged us to seek medical advice. The diagnosis was heartbreaking. He was struck with a severe, untreatable illness, leaving him with limited time. Only our immediate family was privy to this devastating news. Amidst our uncertainty about the future, Andrew tried to offer reassurance. "Jackson will get better. Don't worry about the company. You can trust me to handle everything," he said with a comforting firmness. Although his words were meant to offer solace, the self-assured expression that briefly crossed his face left me uneasy. As time passed, Andrew's demeanor began to shift more noticeably. According to one of Jackson's trusted employees, Andrew's attitude towards his colleagues had soured. He began to speak condescendingly to those around him, creating a tense atmosphere at work. This shift in behavior led to significant discontent. Several employees left, unable to tolerate his tirades, while others lost their motivation. Despite these warning signs, Andrew continued to demonstrate a profound dedication to his work. However, the growing rift between his professional zeal and the personal strains it caused became increasingly hard to ignore. In a moment of concern, I approached Andrew, thinking perhaps the pressure of keeping the company profitable was overwhelming him. "Could you please consider the feelings of your employees as well?" I asked gently, hoping to remind him of his responsibilities not just as a manager, but as a leader. Instead of understanding, his response was dismissive and sharp. "You should stick to supporting your husband," he snapped coldly, his voice tinged with impatience. He seems close to his last days, and it's best you don't meddle in my affairs. His arrogance was palpable as he claimed ownership over the company my husband had nurtured. You should be grateful wise man, have stayed silent and followed this incompetent president until now. I was stunned. His harsh tirade made the anxiety I'd felt recently surge. Day by day, Andrew's behavior worsened, putting immense pressure on the employees. These were staff members who had been with the company from the beginning, dedicated to securing contracts through careful, personal discussions with clients, just as Jackson had always encouraged. But Andrew had no time for such methods. In this world, efficiency is everything. Don't be foolish. I'll fire you if you don't keep up, he would retort crudely. He had also implemented a new system of sharing reports electronically, which proved challenging for our older employees. Can't you old people even use a computer properly? Get out if you're slowing down progress, he would shout, even going as far as knocking over garbage cans in his fits of rage, forcing the employees to clean up the mess. His tactless approach extended to our business relationships as well. As the recession impacted our long-term partners, Andrew's lack of empathy became even more evident. We're not running a charity here. If you can't meet the terms, we won't do business with you, he declared, eroding the trust that had been built over years. When Sarah came to me seeking advice on how to handle the situation, I realized just how far things had spiraled out of control. It was clear that something needed to be done to protect the company's integrity and the well-being of everyone connected to it. Dealing with Andrew had become increasingly difficult. Lately, he had been treating my daughter, Sarah, more like a servant than his wife. If she so much as hinted at disagreement, his temper would flare violently. Who else would marry you if not for your father's position? You're not even my type, he would cruelly taunt her about her personality and appearance. Sarah confided in me. Hurt and disillusioned, Mom, Andrew's lost all his kindness. It's like he sees me as something dirty now. The Andrew we're seeing now is the real one, she concluded bitterly, a tearful frustration in her voice after learning about more of his harsh actions from one of his subordinates. My husband, despite his worsening health, had also grown increasingly worried about his employees' behavior. One day, he called me to his bedside, a serious look in his eyes. I need you to do something for me, he said weakly, entrusting me with a task to handle the situation. Not long after, despite all our hopes and efforts, my husband passed away within a year of his diagnosis. At his funeral, I was overwhelmed with grief, not just for the loss of my partner with whom I had shared a life full of mutual respect and happiness, but also for the menacing turn our lives had taken. During the solemnity of the priest's sermon, Andrew leaned in close and hissed in my ear, "I'm going to dispose of you in the mountains." The cold, sinister smile on his face as I turned to look at him confirmed his malicious intent. With my husband no longer there to keep him in check, Andrew felt emboldened, secure in his new role as president of the company. From now on, I can make the company do whatever I want, his demeanor seemed to declare. But Andrew, consumed by his arrogance and unaware of the forces he was tampering with, had no idea of the resolve forming within me. As he basked in his perceived victory, I silently vowed, I'll be the one to put an end to this. The battle for my family's legacy and the soul of the company was just beginning, and I was determined to stop Andrew's reign of terror and restore the values my husband and I had cherished. Now was the moment to honor the promise I made to my late husband. As I stood by his coffin, a firm resolve settled within me. "Give me your strength," I whispered quietly, feeling the weight of the commitment I was about to uphold. In the days following the funeral, I organized a shareholders meeting. Andrew, the current team lead, and my son-in-law, sauntered in late, casually taking a seat at the center of the room. He seemed surprised to see me seated at the same table, his eyes flickering with confusion and annoyance. Under his breath, I heard him mutter disdainfully, which almost made me laugh. The meeting proceeded, and the moderator introduced the next agenda item with calm precision. We will now discuss the removal of Andrew from the board of team lead. Andrew, who seemed oblivious to this development, was visibly shocked. "Wait a minute, what are you talking about?" he blurted out, nearly toppling from his chair in his haste. much to the amusement of everyone present. Years ago, my husband had wisely entrusted me with a majority stake in the company. This significant shareholding gave me considerable influence over company affairs, a fact Andrew had underestimated. He knew about the shareholders' meeting, but had no clue that his potential dismissal was on the table. "How can I be dismissed without a valid reason? I'm the president's son-in-law," he protested, his voice tinged with desperation. I calmly responded, addressing the room. "It seems your approach has alienated our dedicated employees, risking our company's competitive edge. We're not here to experiment. We must also care for our business partners and staff." The shareholders listened intently, nodding in agreement with the values Jackson had always championed. Andrew's face reddened with anger as he realized the room was against him. "You amateurs have no idea what you're talking about," he shouted, unable to contain his frustration. The tide had turned. As the shareholders voiced their support for my stance, I felt a bittersweet vindication. I was not just fulfilling my promise to my husband, but also safeguarding the legacy he had built with so much love and hard work. The meeting wasn't just a formality. It was a declaration that the soul of the company would not falter under my watch. Actions like these will not lead to any profits for the company. "It seems you're only looking out for yourself, not for the company's welfare, aren't you?" "I'm aware of what you're doing, Andrew." "What do you mean by this accusation?" "You're stepping way out of bounds," I challenged. Holding up the confidential documents that my late husband had entrusted to me, I confronted Andrew in front of everyone. "Have you been funneling company funds for your personal gain?" At that moment, the room's atmosphere changed dramatically, and everyone's attention shifted to Andrew. His face showed visible signs of stress, and beads of sweat formed on his forehead. "How did you come across this?" he stammered. "Jackson provided it to me. He always put the customers first. A policy you tried to overturn, didn't you? That's why he instructed me to bring this to light. It's unfair for you to pry into these matters. The company cannot tolerate having embezzlers on its staff. So, who do you think will take over as president?" Andrew blurted out, his desperation evident. "There's no one else but me." "Don't worry," I replied calmly. "My husband wanted me to take his place." "What are you talking about? A novice with no experience can't run a company," Andrew exclaimed, visibly shaken. His insult was based on ignorance. He didn't know that while the company was still growing, it was a tradition for the company's executives to convene in a residential conference room. During these meetings, I always sat beside my husband, the president, contributing my thoughts and ideas. He trusted me implicitly because I was thoroughly familiar with all the company's operations, though I never made a show of it. But I had always been privy to every detail. When my husband transferred his majority shares to me, my plan was to eventually pass them on to our son-in-law, but that was no longer a possibility. "I'm going to act as if this conversation never happened," I stated coldly, realizing his predicament. Overwhelmed, Andrew lost his composure and began pleading for my forgiveness. "Please, I'm begging you not to fire me. Accept my sincerest apologies for my past behavior. I promise to dedicate my life to the company's success and will even repay all the money I took," Andrew implored with desperation in his voice. "Do you really think you can escape responsibility just like that? You said you needed the funds to kickstart a new business, yet how does that explain the lavish gifts, luxury cars, designer goods, and expensive jewelry you've been handing out?" "It hardly seems you were saving for a business," I countered sharply. Andrew looked cornered but continued to argue his case. "I truly intended to use that money for a startup, not for personal luxuries." "That's difficult to believe, Andrew. And regardless, you've already been terminated from your position," I informed him with finality. In a desperate move, Andrew then tried to manipulate me by threatening my family. "If you do this, your daughter will suffer too." "Is that what you want?" "Sarah has already decided to leave you. She's fed up and she's already moved out," I replied coolly, watching his face fall. "And yes, I've reported your embezzlement to the authorities. They're expecting you." Following this confrontation, Andrew was removed from the board and subsequently arrested for embezzlement. Left by my daughter, he faced the consequences alone. As the new president, my days are filled with challenges, but I am committed to growing the business that my husband left in my care. I value the loyal employees who have been with us for years and am eager to introduce fresh ideas while preserving a customer-centric approach. At home, the atmosphere has brightened considerably. Sarah, free from the stress of her troubled marriage, greets me with a smile each day. She's still young, her whole life ahead of her, and I am here to ensure she has the support she needs to navigate her future confidently. My name is Quinn, and I am 30 years old. I experienced a profound shock when my husband abruptly told me he had filed for divorce. His words were harsh. A poor wife is useless after all. This revelation came out of nowhere while I was away on a business trip. Not only had he filed for divorce, but he also admitted to marrying someone else during my absence. He accused me of marrying him for his money and demanded that I relinquish any claim to our shared property. Growing up, my sister and I were raised by our single mother after our father passed away when I was just in kindergarten. We weren't wealthy, but we were a happy family. Despite this, the shadow of poverty never completely left me, even as I began working and earning a decent salary. I was always careful with money, frequently buying discounted items and avoiding eating out to save as much as I could. 4 years ago, I married Waylon. We met through mutual friends and quickly connected despite our different backgrounds. Jay Waylon came from a wealthy family and had different views on money and life. His kindness and the new experiences he introduced to me were what drew me to him. We got married quickly within a year of meeting as I was eager to start a family. After marrying, we moved into my company's subsidized apartment because of its affordability. I continued to work and pay the rent, while Waylon covered other expenses. Despite his traditional views that a woman should quit her job and manage the home, I was not ready to give up my career. I enjoyed my work and had significant responsibilities. Besides, quitting my job would mean losing the subsidized housing, increasing our living costs, especially if we planned to have children. I decided to keep working as long as possible to secure our financial stability. Our married life began smoothly with this arrangement, but Waylon's old-fashioned views sometimes made him seem more like a figure from a bygone era rather than the supportive partner I had envisioned. Despite everything, I never imagined he would end our marriage in such a sudden and cruel way. I felt it was essential for me to keep working, so I decided to discuss this with my husband, Waylon, during one of our conversations. This might have been the first time I openly disagreed with his views. I approached the topic carefully, saying, "Waylon, about your idea of me being a homemaker, could I possibly continue to work until we start a family? I think it's wise to save as much as we can beforehand." Waylon looked surprised and responded somewhat defensively. "Are you implying that my salary isn't sufficient? Or do you just want more money to spend frivolously?" "No, it's not like that at all," I reassured him quickly. "Children are expensive, and I want us to be financially prepared. My income could help cover our living expenses. Having extra money can't be a bad thing, right?" He paused, then replied, "So your annual income is $200,000, right? It's not a lot, but it does cover the rent, which is better than nothing." "Okay, you can keep working, but make sure the housework doesn't suffer." "Thank you, Waylon," I said, relieved yet uneasy about the underlying tension. "I'll manage both work and home until we decide to have kids." Balancing my job and household responsibilities proved more challenging than I anticipated. My days were packed. I'd wake up early to prepare breakfast and lunch boxes for both of us, and I'd also do some dinner prep and tidying before heading to work. After returning home, I'd cook dinner, heat the bath, and do the laundry. Once Waylon was asleep, I often reflected on our dwindling couple time, wondering if this was really how marriage was supposed to be. Waylon embraced a traditional role, doing nothing around the house. Despite seeing how overwhelmed I was, he would simply enjoy his dinner, drink his beer, and relax. He bathed as soon as the water was ready and then retreated to his room. I longed for him to offer even a little help, but I hesitated to ask, fearing he might suggest I quit my job. Hoping things might change if we had children, I decided to bring up the topic. Waylon, don't you think it's time we started thinking about having kids? I asked one evening. Hi, kids? You seem pretty energetic despite being tired from work and all the chores, he remarked casually. It's not about that, I insisted. I really want to have children. And remember, I'm already over 31. Women have a limited time to conceive, and it's becoming harder as I get older. He frowned, then said dismissively, Then maybe we don't need kids. If we have one, you'll expect me to help, right? You know I'm busy with work. I won't be involved in child rearing. His blunt declaration stunned me. It's strange not to want to help with your own child. I might end up raising them mostly on my own, but shouldn't you at least want to be involved? They would be your child too. Child rearing is your job, Waylon stated firmly. I'm working to support the family, so I definitely won't help with the kids. This conversation left me reeling as it underscored the growing distance in our relationship and made the prospect of starting a family seem increasingly unlikely. Waylon concluded the conversation harshly and walked to his room, leaving me alone in the living room. Tears overwhelmed me, not only because my desire for children was dismissed, but also because he ridiculed my upbringing. After this, our relationship declined quickly. We barely spoke, and the house felt more silent each day. Perhaps it was time to think about divorce, but memories of the kind man I once married haunted me, making me yearn for the connection we once shared. In the meantime, I continued to manage both my work and our home, despite the strain. My responsibilities at work grew, leading to more business trips and increasing the distance between Waylon and me. One evening, I informed him of another upcoming trip. His response this time was unexpectedly gentle. Another trip? You're always working so hard. Take care, even though you must be tired. His kindness, so rare these days, surprised me. He even smiled and hinted at a big surprise waiting for me upon my return. Our wedding anniversary was near, and I dared to hope that maybe, just maybe, he was planning something special. This faint hope, however, was cruelly shattered. When I returned after 8 days, I couldn't open the front door. My key no longer fit the lock. As I struggled, Waylon's voice came from inside. Surprised, Quinn? This is your first surprise. I changed the locks. Confused and shocked, I demanded, What do you mean? Why doesn't my key work? Open the door! Why would I let a stranger into my house? Waylon retorted, I've changed the locks. And just so you know, we're divorced. That's your second surprise. Divorce? I never signed any papers. How could you do this? I protested. I just forged your signature. I submitted it with a friend's name as a witness. So you're a stranger now, got it? Stunned, I realized the extent of his betrayal. He finally opened the door, revealing a document inside. Sign this if you want in, he said, handing me a paper that waived my rights to any property division. You think I married you for your money? I asked, my voice barely a whisper from the shock. That's right. Poor people like you see a rich guy and think it's a free ride. But not with me. So, you'll waive your rights to the property, won't you? His words cut deep. I had never considered divorce or property division. All I wanted was to mend our failing marriage. Now, faced with his cold betrayal and legal trickery, I realized how far apart we had truly grown. I needed to gather my strength, not just to deal with this legal mess, but to reclaim my dignity and independence from a man who saw me only as a financial calculation. Waylon arrogantly declared that as a person from a poor background, my savings were insignificant compared to his assets. He asserted that if anyone were to divide property, it would be him giving money to me, not the other way around. Is that so? Well, that doesn't matter. Let's change the document to a mutual renunciation of property rights and make it public, I responded firmly. Following our conversation, Waylon modified the document on his computer, agreeing to make it a public declaration. However, the submission of this document would take some time. In the interim, I decided it was best to pack my belongings and leave the house. As I was doing so, Waylon's contempt was palpable. He sneered, suggesting he had considered discarding my possessions while I was away, mocking the simplicity of my wardrobe as typical of someone poor. Little did Waylon know, my minimal belongings were a deliberate choice, part of a broader strategy I had in mind. The only surprise was Waylon changing the locks unexpectedly. A few days later, as I anticipated, Waylon called me in a panic. "Quinn, what have you done?" he demanded. "I haven't done anything." "Why are you panicking?" I replied calmly. "I was told to leave the apartment," he stammered. "Oh, you were still living there. That's not allowed. It's a new month, you're trespassing." "Trespassing? But it's my house. Are you okay? Did you forget that was a company apartment I rented? I was the leaseholder, so naturally you can't live there anymore." "That's ridiculous. How could you do this? I can't believe you didn't know." "I'm not the one who should be accused of acting independently," I countered. "Didn't I tell you that you can't just change the locks of a rental apartment? It's my lease. Even if you were the leaseholder, the owner is the apartment manager. You can't change the locks without informing them." "Is that so?" Waylon was flustered. "Also, I terminated the lease while you changed the locks. I was allowed to live there until this month. I was planning to return, but now you've unlawfully altered someone else's property, which could be considered criminal damage." "Wait, why did you terminate it so early?" "Criminal damage? Is that why the police are at the front door now?" "I'm too scared to open it," he confessed, his voice trembling. Calmly, I replied, "So the police did come?" "Don't worry, it's probably not for trespassing or criminal damage. It's better to talk to them." "Why do I even need to know about the police?" he asked, bewildered. "Because I reported you for filing the divorce papers yourself. It seems like you've committed crimes like forgery and fraudulent use of a private document. Divorce papers can be filed by one party, but only with mutual agreement and actual signatures. Since you forged my signature and the witness, it's obviously a crime." Waylon was taken aback. "How do you know about Alea? Did you think I knew nothing?" I continued to press the matter, revealing my awareness of his deceit and the implications for his planned marriage with Alea. As Waylon processed the severity of his actions and the legal consequences, it became clear that the situation was unraveling fast, far beyond his control. I had hired a private detective agency to thoroughly investigate Waylon's affair with Alea. It was a hectic time at work, and coordinating with the agency was challenging. To my shock, I learned that while I was supposedly away on a business trip, Waylon had even organized a lavish wedding ceremony with her. "Are you okay? Your business trip was a lie?" Waylon stammered over the phone. "Yes, I took leave from work despite it being busy. I needed time to gather evidence and prepare documents. I knew about you bringing Alea home. It would have been impossible to do this while working," I explained. After revealing everything, Waylon was silent, his voice filled with dismay. He pleaded, "Please don't tell Alea I'm divorced." "Why would I? There's no such fact to tell." "Really, thank you, but are you misunderstanding something? When did you become divorced? That fake divorce paper you created is invalid. Remember, so legally, you're still my husband, not divorced." "What?" Waylon was baffled. "Since you committed adultery while still legally my husband, Alea needs to pay compensation. I sent a demand for reparation to her house yesterday by express delivery. She didn't know you were married, right? Then I can't withdraw the claim at this point. I already knew Alea believed Waylon was single, but I deliberately sent the reparation demand. Alea hadn't contacted me yet, so maybe she hadn't received the letter. It should arrive soon. Should you really be on the phone with me when you also have to deal with the police?" "You seem busy," I remarked. "I'll ignore the police? I won't be arrested. I'm going to Alea's house now to get the letter back before she or her family can accept it," Waylon hastily said, then hung up. He probably went straight to Alea's house to intercept the postman. I knew it would be futile because the letter was sent as registered mail, addressed only to Alea. Even if he waited for the postman, he couldn't receive it. A few hours later, a disheartened Waylon called me. He recounted an incident that happened when the postman arrived. "Finally, I'll take that envelope," Who are you? You don't live here, right? I'm practically a resident here since I'm married. I have the right to receive the mail. I see, but I can't give you this envelope. It's registered mail for Alea only. Give it to me. Absolutely not. If you're so eager, ask Alea for permission. What's going on here? Oh, Alea, this is registered mail for you. This man insisted on taking it. Sorry for the disturbance. Now I'll be on my way. What's this? A demand for reparation? Waylon, you were married? What's going on here? Sorry, it's just... She's an ex-wife from a long time ago. I was embarrassed to say I'm divorced. I'm sorry for keeping it secret. But it's strange, isn't it? We haven't been dating long and a demand for reparation? If you were divorced before we started dating, there shouldn't be any problem, right? Well, my ex-wife is crazy. Maybe she's demanding reparation out of spite because I got married. That was the excuse Waylon gave, but such a lie was quickly exposed when Alea opened the envelope. In the aftermath of the ordeal, I wrote a detailed letter to Alea, including my contact information, which led her to call me directly. During our conversation, I explained about Waylon's affair, the invalid divorce, and their wedding ceremony that occurred while he was still legally married to me. They had not yet submitted their marriage registration because Waylon planned to do it on Uyghur Coup's Day, waiting due to uncertainties about the finality of our divorce. Once Alea learned the truth, Waylon shamefully fled her house and reached out to me. Despite everything, I still had things to settle with him, so we agreed to meet at a nearby cafe. As soon as I arrived, Waylon began pleading. Quinn, please withdraw the reparation claim. Let's pretend we've been separated for a long time and are officially divorced. I can apologize to Alea and maybe cover this up. You think I'm desperate to stay married to you? I countered. I was planning to file for divorce anyway, but since you cheated, you'll be paying reparation. Are you just trying to extort money from me? That's typical of the poor, he scoffed, his voice dripping with disdain. You're talking nonsense, I replied firmly. Depending on my answer, everything can change. There's still a scenario where we don't get divorced. If I say no, you can't reject it, meaning you can't marry Alea, and your marital status will be exposed. Fine, I'll pay the reparation. Just divorce me now. Sign here, he said, resigned. And about property division, how much more do you want to take from me? Reparation should be enough. Remember, we agreed to waive property division, right? Let's make it official. All right, you're not as bad as I thought, he conceded. We then went to a public notary, made a public document for reparation and property division, and proceeded to City Hall to submit the divorce papers, finalizing our divorce. Relieved, I exchanged final words with Waylon. Glad we don't have to divide property. What are you saying? I'm the one who benefits from that. By the way, do you even have assets after paying me reparation? Alea will also claim damages. She mentioned charging you for the wedding expenses. That's impossible. I'm marrying Alea. She can't claim that. We're divorced now, so there should be no problem, he retorted, still living in denial. You committed marriage fraud. You had a wedding while still married. Do you think Alea still believes you? I challenged. A marriage fraud? That's ridiculous. Alea will believe me, he insisted, clearly deluding himself. Believe that if you want, I replied, knowing better. I heard from Alea directly. Also, weren't the guests at your wedding paid actors? You still owe them. You knew about that? I hadn't paid them yet. What does it matter to you? You could have just taken property division and been better off, he lamented. That's what I wanted to tell you. Even if we had divided property, you would have benefited more. What are you talking about, poor woman? Your family is poor and you only make $22,000 a year, right? Even if you got... Waylon's disdainful remarks underscored his persistent misunderstanding and disregard for the complexities of our situation. But I had moved beyond his narrow perspective, seeking justice and clarity in the wake of our broken marriage. Waylon mocked me once more, mistaking my financial situation. If you get a raise, it'll barely be $20,000. You don't own any property. You keep calling me poor, so I thought you might be mistaken. Yes, my salary was indeed $20,000, but you seem to forget I work for a foreign company, I calmly corrected him. It appears you have no interest in me, but I've become AHR manager. It's not $200,000 per year, but $222,000 per month. That makes your annual income $2,111,000, not $2,111,000, I continued, correcting his miscalculation. You're still bad with numbers. How do you manage to keep a job? Waylon was stunned. That can't be true. Of course, I haven't had the chance to spend such an amount, so I've been saving it for the future. The savings from before our marriage aren't part of the property division, but there's still a considerable amount since our marriage. I could have received half of that in the property division. You were my destiny, after all. I'll get the divorce papers corrected, he conceded, his tone changing. Are you okay? After all the contempt, you think I'd gladly undo the divorce if you have that much money? You don't need to claim reparation, right? It's just a small amount for you, he tried to argue. He who laughs at 1 cent will weep for 1 cent, I replied firmly. This reparation is for the mental anguish you caused me. I'd like to claim more, honestly. And since we've made it official, make sure to pay it, even in installments. I'll be penniless. Also, don't go back to that apartment. Your belongings should have been moved to your parents' house by now. You thought I had few belongings, but that was because I had already moved most of them. Were you that indifferent to me? I can't have so little, so I have to go back to my parents' house. They don't know anything yet, do they? Let me explain, he pleaded. Don't say anything. I've already told them everything. It's only right to explain why we're divorcing. Oh, and your father said don't ever step over our threshold again. So I have nowhere to go, he lamented. He collapsed, and I left the cafe. Later, I heard he caused trouble at the police station. Despite my advice, he went back to the apartment, sitting aimlessly in the empty apartment until the manager called the police, and he was taken away. I'm not sure if it was for obstructing public duties, trespassing, or for the falsified divorce papers. Eventually, his parents took responsibility for him. After talking with me and learning about Alea, they decided that apologizing and paying damages to Alea's family came first. They went to Alea's house to apologize, kneeling in front of her family. They settled everything without pressing charges for marriage fraud, even paying for the wedding expenses. I had expected them to sue, so it was disappointing they didn't. So, I decided to pursue legal action against him for forging the divorce papers. Waylon offered a settlement, but I didn't withdraw the lawsuit. I didn't want him to think everything could be solved with money. I wanted him to be convicted and understand the gravity of his actions, even if it cost time and money. I left everything to my lawyer, so it wasn't too burdensome for me. Waylon's unethical actions and the ensuing marriage fraud scandal eventually led to his downfall at his company. After being detained by the police and failing to report to work, he was fired. With no job, he moved back in with his parents, who put him to work at a relative's project manager. His father took control of his earnings, leaving him with no personal income. Though I assumed his parents might support him through this tough time, they were far stricter than I anticipated. They paid both my reparation and Alea's compensation, and planned to make Waylon work tirelessly until he repaid every cent. He lived in a basic shed without electricity, receiving just $7 per day for food, which was deducted from his salary. His parents even planned to disown him and kick him out once he cleared his debts, a severe turn of fate. Meanwhile, after the divorce was finalized, I accepted a position at our head office overseas, leaving behind the tumultuous past. Moving abroad removed any worries that Waylon might seek me out for help or harbor any resentment. At first, I thought work would dominate my life, but soon enough, a new chapter began. I started dating a foreign executive from our office. We connected deeply, and I shared with him everything about my past and my former husband, to which he responded with understanding and support. Now, I'm pregnant and we plan to marry soon. My partner is enthusiastic about taking paternity leave and is committed to co-parenting, offering a refreshing perspective on family responsibilities. This support has been transformative, helping me finally grasp the true happiness and confidence I had longed for, and enabling me to start building the happy family I always dreamed of. This journey has taught me that while enduring a difficult marriage in silence is often seen as a virtue, it is not always wise. Honest discussions can lead to resolutions, and sometimes, divorce is not just an option but a necessary step towards reclaiming one's life. Now, as I look forward to my future with my new partner, I realize the importance of standing up for oneself and the potential for new beginnings, even after enduring great hardships. My name is Bella, a 30-year-old programmer who enjoys the comfort of working from home. My story begins at a friendly mixer where I met Silas. Our conversation quickly turned to finance, and when I mentioned my savings, which had amassed to a considerable sum, his interest visibly perked up. Despite not being particularly remarkable in other respects, Silas's engaging conversation led us to marriage. A year has passed since we tied the knot, yet we remain childless. I take pride in my career. My steady income as a programmer has allowed me to nearly reach a milestone of $700,000 in assets. I often ponder whether, if I continue at this rate, I might one day afford to retire early and live off my savings. This dream of financial freedom was inspired by my upbringing. Orphaned at 10, I was raised by my grandparents. My grandfather, a shrewd businessman, often reminded me that no amount of money was ever sufficient. He believed that money was meant to be circulated and wisely spent it attracts more of its kind, he would say. From the start of my career, I followed his advice, investing part of my salary into investment funds, gradually building the nest egg I mentioned. Silas, throughout our courtship and into our marriage, seemed genuinely devoted, always courteous and chivalrous, often humorously insistent on putting ladies first. However, the reality of our marriage took a stark turn when I discovered Silas's betrayal. He had secretly used my savings to purchase a house, planning a new life with someone else. His confession came bluntly as he declared our marriage pointless due to my supposed financial ruin, prompting him to seek happiness elsewhere. His callous betrayal left me devastated and furious, struggling to reconcile the man I married with the one who now so cruelly dismissed our vows. As I face this painful betrayal, I reflect on my grandfather's words about money and relationships, realizing the hard truth in his wisdom about the complexities of wealth and human nature. My husband, Silas, always knew how to make me feel special. In the early days, he would pull out my chair at restaurants, open the car door for me, and wait patiently as I got in. These gestures made me feel truly loved and cherished. I was proud to call him my husband, and our relationship felt genuinely affectionate and fresh. However, everything changed dramatically after we got married. One morning, after I'd been up working until the early hours, I left our bedroom feeling weary but hopeful for a new day. "Good morning," I called out cheerily to Silas, who was lounging on the living room sofa. But he was too engrossed in his smartphone to even acknowledge me. After a quick shower, I settled in front of my computer and immersed myself in my programming work, the room filled with the soft clattering of my keyboard. Suddenly, Silas came over and tapped my shoulder. "What is it?" I asked, turning to face him. "Give me some money," he demanded casually, as if this were a normal request. This had become a frustrating routine. Reluctantly, I handed him the money, and he quickly left the house. Over time, as I began to refuse his demands for money, his demeanor shifted. He grew indifferent and cold. The warmth we once shared dwindled, and our interactions became sparse and strained. One evening, after returning from a long day, I found Silas sprawled on the sofa. The TV was on, but his attention was fixed on his phone. "Should I turn off the TV?" I inquired, hoping to engage him somehow. "I'm watching it." "Don't touch it," he snapped, grabbing the remote from my hand with a roughness that took me by surprise. Silas, an ordinary executive officer, had recently been given a transfer, which I thought might be contributing to his foul mood. But as days turned into weeks, his irritable behavior persisted. He would snap at anything I said and stopped joining me for dinner at home. One evening, I called him. "Aren't you coming home yet?" "I'm making dinner." "No, I don't need to." "And if you're going to complain, you don't have to cook," he retorted sharply. His words stung, and I was left wondering how our relationship had deteriorated to this point. What had happened to the considerate man I married? The change was baffling and heartbreaking. Why is it like this? Is it because of work? What else could it be? That was always his explanation, and getting through to him became increasingly difficult. I thought it would be too troublesome to argue back, so I managed to hold back somehow. But as time went on, the days he didn't come home began to increase. Without any prior notice, whenever I called, all I got were excuses. "I have an unexpected business function tonight and won't be able to catch the last train. Looks like I'll be booking a hotel room." This response became all too familiar. Does business really demand his presence so often and unexpectedly? I was unsure. But perhaps it was possible, though I started to harbor suspicions. One day, while cleaning, I stumbled upon his tablet left charging a device he normally carried everywhere. Just then, a message flashed on the screen. "Where should we go today?" The place we went last time was good, right? Adorned with numerous heart emojis. It was undeniably from someone else, likely his mistress. I'd had my suspicions, but seeing such blatant evidence of infidelity was a different ordeal. A woman's pride begins to ache in such moments. Driven by a mix of nausea and resolve, I delved deeper into the tablet. The conversations and photos with the other woman were abundant, painting a clear picture of betrayal. Their interactions, also trivial and shallow, reminded me of middle schoolers experiencing their first crush, nothing but foolish banter. The more I read those vulgar messages, the more my despair turned to anger, and that anger kindled flames of revenge within me. Determined, I decided that if he could have a mistress, then I would certainly seek compensation and pursue a divorce. It was with this newfound resolve that I was blindsided by his sudden declaration, contrary to my expectations. "Let's get divorced. I'm marrying a new woman." "Huh. I bought a newly built house too, so it's goodbye to you," he said without a hint of remorse. His words, so cold and detached, confirmed the painful reality of our broken vows and the hollow shell our marriage had become. "I bought a house," my husband announced cheerfully, a smug smile spreading across his face as he spoke of his newly acquired property. "Where did you get that kind of money?" I asked, baffled by his sudden affluence. "Well, from various sources," he replied nonchalantly, leaving me even more perplexed. As he laid the divorce papers on the table, he instructed me briskly, "Just fill out your part and submit it." It was all so matter-of-fact, devoid of emotion. "We probably won't see each other anymore, but take care," he added, and with his belongings already packed, he left our home swiftly. Within moments, it was as if he had never been there at all, leaving me stunned and speechless. Before our marriage, I knew of his careless ways with money and relationships, and I had braced myself for potential issues. Fortunately, my own financial security was robust. I had significant savings and earned more than he did. Yet, the thought of him purchasing a newly built house nagged at me incessantly. How could he, who often begged me for pocket money, afford such an expense? Driven by suspicion, I went to check my bank passbook only to find it missing. Panic set in as I frantically searched, but it was nowhere to be found. The passbook that held the $700,000 I had saved since my single days seemed to have vanished. Turning to my banking app in desperation, my heart sank. The balance displayed a mere $1. The money had been withdrawn in 4 large transactions. A wave of fury overwhelmed me, a feeling so intense and pure, unlike anything I had ever experienced toward anyone before. "I won't forgive him," I vowed silently, my resolve hardening. "I'll get my money back, and I'll make him pay back double." That same day, I visited a law firm. The lawyer listened as I explained that I did not know my husband's current whereabouts or the details of how he had spent the embezzled money. As we began to unravel the tangled web of deceit and theft, I knew this was just the beginning of a long and challenging fight for justice. Deciding to take legal action, I realized I should consult the police and file a report. The police could then look for my husband and investigate how he had spent the stolen money. If found, I could initiate several procedures to reclaim the embezzled funds, including sending a registered letter demanding repayment or seeking mediation in court. Given the breakdown of our marriage, divorce seemed inevitable, and discussions regarding the division of property and compensation would be necessary. Although I'd already decided on divorce, I initially hesitated to involve the authorities, opting first to consult with the police. The police officer I spoke with explained that embezzling a spouse's savings is considered a crime, specifically embezzlement or misappropriation, both punishable by law. For criminal charges to be pressed, it must be proven that the embezzlement was intentional, violating the spouse's property rights. If a significant amount of money was involved, the consequences could be severe. Armed with this knowledge from both the lawyer and the police officer, it became clear that my husband's actions, his infidelity, and the theft of my savings constituted serious breaches of trust. These actions provided sufficient grounds for a divorce and justified my claims for damages and compensation. Moreover, these were undoubtedly criminal acts. Following my lawyer's advice, I decided to send my husband a written claim for damages and compensation for mental anguish. Less than a week after filing the report, the police located my husband's whereabouts. About a month after sending the claim, my phone rang. "Hey, what's going on? What are you talking about?" The voice was unmistakably my husband's, clearly confused. "I got a bill from a law firm," he continued, perplexed. I responded calmly, knowing that this was an expected part of our ongoing legal proceedings. "Oh, that? I thought it was about time," I said, indicating that the legal actions were merely the beginning of holding him accountable for his actions. "I thought it was about time to get serious," I said calmly as I explained to my husband that the bill sent through the lawyer demanded $600,000. This amount was for the repayment of my savings plus additional compensation, and it was a non-negotiable condition for our divorce. I had also hinted at pursuing criminal charges if he failed to comply. "We're married, you know. Your savings should be shared by the married couple, right?" my husband argued, clearly misunderstanding the law. "Just so you know," I replied, firm and clear, "whatever money I saved before we tied the knot is still mine, not ours. So if you took any without asking, I can legally demand it back." "Impossible," he scoffed, but then his tone shifted abruptly. "Fine, $600,000 then. I'll sue you in civil court and seize all your assets. I'll even consider pressing criminal charges, so brace yourself." After a moment of tense silence, he changed his tune. "All right, I'll pay. What's gotten into you all of a sudden? If I pay off the $600,000, you won't press criminal charges and agree to the divorce, right?" "Exactly, you catch on fast," I affirmed. From his laughter over the phone, I could almost guess where he planned to get the money. "You plan to use your mistress to pay, don't you?" "So what? Money is money," he retorted, still oblivious. He's still being deceived, still seeing that woman without even knowing her background, I thought to myself. I had already hired a private investigator and gathered all the necessary information about her. As a parting gift, I decided to enlighten him. "Do you think of that woman as the daughter of a wealthy family or a CEO's daughter?" "I don't need to answer you," he snapped defensively. "Oh, well, listen carefully. That woman is a professional scam artist. She approaches wealthy-looking men, claiming to be an heiress or a CEO's daughter, takes their money, and then disappears. Several men have filed police reports against her." "No way, you're lying." "She's the CEO's daughter. I've met her father, and he promised to make me the CEO in the future," he insisted, naive as ever. "Oh my, you're as stupid as ever. By the way, did you buy the new house in her name?" "How foolish of you. That can't be true, right? We were engaged. I even bought her a ring," he stammered, his voice tinged with panic. "That's quite something," I replied dryly. "By the way, is she still at the house?" He hesitated, then confessed, She seemed to be considering something after seeing the documents from the law firm. She said she'll go back to her parents' house for a while and left last night. Oh dear, did she run away? That's impossible, I mused, barely concealing my satisfaction at his dawning realization. The tables had turned, and now he was beginning to see the truth of his precarious situation. Well, did she run away? I asked my husband during our call, urging him to confirm whose name the new house was under. After a brief pause, I decided to end the conversation there. Let's end it here for today, I said, and hung up the phone. A week later, my husband returned home, his face ashen. That woman sold the house and disappeared, he confessed, a predictable outcome in my eyes. Seizing the moment, I pressed him, so you'll pay back my savings and the divorce settlement, won't you? There's no way I have that kind of money. Please don't divorce me, he pleaded. He had cheated on me, got dumped by his mistress, and even lost the house, an utterly despicable chain of events. But it was too late for regrets or playing the victim now. I was resolute. I won't give you a single penny, and the divorce is definite, I told him, every interaction with him intensifying my headache. But I was deceived. I'm the victim here, right? He protested, attempting to twist the narrative. Desperate, he clung to my legs, sobbing and begging for reconciliation. Please, I need you. I'll dedicate my life to you this time, I promise. What a disgraceful sight it was. It's too late to play the victim, I reiterated. Everything from taking my money to being deceived by that woman is all your own doing. Be prepared. With those final words, I forcefully pulled away, and he left, dejected. The divorce was swiftly finalized. I promptly filed a criminal complaint against my ex-husband and his mistress, and also pursued a civil lawsuit to reclaim my money. Eventually, both were arrested. My ex-husband left to wallow in his sorrows, frequented a shabby bar. His mistress, having carried cash from the house sale, was caught with only about $145,000 left of it. During the investigation, my ex-husband admitted, I married for my wife's savings. I never thought I would be deceived in the same way. This confession confirmed his unchanging attitude of playing the victim, which was just the kind of man he was. He deserved everything that came his way. Apparently, that woman had targeted my ex-husband as her 14th victim, deeming him easy to deceive. The total she swindled from her previous victims was around $4 million, much of which she squandered on extravagant visits to host clubs. It seems that karma had its way in the end, as both got what they deserved. Although I was initially dismayed by my own lapse in judgment in choosing a partner, the ordeal ended somewhat favorably for me. Thanks to my lawyer's efforts, the newly built property was successfully transferred to my name. I had no desire to live there, so after renting an apartment and starting anew, my job as a programmer was thriving and my salary increasing. I considered saving money again when I learned that the house, located in an area undergoing redevelopment, was valued at $2 million. Selling it seemed the only sensible choice. Perhaps with the proceeds, I'd treat myself to a nice overseas trip, a journey around the world even. Despite the turmoil of divorce and crime, my assets had unexpectedly doubled in a short period, filling this new chapter of my life with hope for further growth. Watch over me, Grandpa, I thought. When I got married 9 months ago, my life felt balanced and secure. But then, quite unexpectedly, everything changed. My husband announced that I needed to take care of his father, who had become bedridden due to an accident. This was all new to me, and I found it challenging to care for him. Amidst this struggle, my husband declared that he needed a break and planned a vacation to Hawaii. The catch? He and my mother-in-law went, leaving me behind to care for his father. They were oblivious to the profound impact their decision would have on me. My name is Ava, and I am 28 years old. Cooking has always been a passion of mine. After college, I pursued a career with a major restaurant chain, where I now lead the product manager. 8 years into my career, I met Samuel at a local Japanese pub. We struck up a conversation, discovered we were the same age, and quickly hit it off. We started dating soon after and got married a year later. We now live in a cozy apartment conveniently located between our workplaces. Samuel has always been laid back about household chores, often telling me, "You don't have to be perfect at housework. I'm just happy being with you." We enjoy simple pleasures like having dinner together, regardless of who cooks. Samuel often expresses his gratitude, saying, "I'm so happy to be your wife," to which I respond, "Me too. I'm really happy to have a wife like you." Even 5 months into our marriage, we cherish our bond and have loving conversations like these daily. Yet, the situation with his father and the unexpected trip to Hawaii tested our relationship in ways I never anticipated. I had always thought our happiness would stretch out endlessly, but suddenly, those joyful days disappeared. One evening when I arrived home from work, I found my husband, Samuel, already in the living room. Usually, the first one home would cheerfully greet the other, but that day, the air was thick with silence. I noticed Samuel was absorbed in his phone, his expression filled with worry. "Samuel, hey, are you all right?" I asked, trying to break the heavy quiet. Startled, he looked up from his phone. "Oh, hey, Ava. I didn't see you there. What happened? You look really worried," I pressed, feeling a knot of concern tighten in my stomach. "It's my mom," he replied. "Dad was in an accident." I was stunned, barely processing his words. But we couldn't just stand by helplessly. I grabbed his hand firmly. "What are you doing sitting here? We need to see your dad now." He gently pulled his hand away, shaking his head. "We can't go, Ava." "Why not?" I asked, my anxiety spiking. "He's not in a state for visitors right now. Mom's going to stay with him until he's better." The finality in his voice hit me hard. I let go of his hand and sank down onto the sofa beside him. "Is he going to be okay?" I asked, the worry clear in my voice. Samuel didn't answer, and his silence only deepened my concern. My father-in-law had just turned 62 and had always been active, enjoying hiking and golfing on his days off. It was hard to imagine this energetic man confined to a hospital bed. Samuel was especially affected, not just as his son, but also as an employee. His father wasn't only his parent, but also the business development associate where he worked. Seeing him so distressed and unlike his usual upbeat self was deeply unsettling. It was a week before we could visit. When we entered his hospital room, my father-in-law lay there with a weak smile. "Are you all right?" I asked, trying to mask my worry. He scratched his head, looking sheepish. "Ava, I'm sorry for causing you all this worry. Really, I'm not upset." His apologetic tone and frail smile were heartbreaking. It was clear how much this situation was affecting everyone, bridging our worries with his own attempts to reassure us. I breathed a sigh of relief to see my father-in-law safe and managing a smile. "I'm glad to hear you're doing all right, but please stay in bed for a while longer," I urged gently. He nodded, his smile reassuring me even as I processed the gravity of his condition. He had suffered a spinal cord injury in the accident and was paralyzed. The doctors planned for him to stay hospitalized and undergo rehabilitation for about 3 months to gauge his recovery. Even once he was released from the hospital, he would need continued rehabilitation. In his absence, Thomas, my husband, decided to temporarily take over as development associate of the company. It was a strange feeling to think of my own husband in such a position. While I was absorbing the conversation between Thomas and his father, my mother-in-law entered the hospital room. She pulled me aside into a corner and spoke with a biting sarcasm. "Hey, Ava, are you sure you're not mistaken here?" "Mistaken?" I echoed, puzzled by her tone. "Just because Thomas is development associate now doesn't mean you can't have fun, right? Please don't take advantage of Samuel," she said sharply. I was taken aback. "I don't have to be concerned about that. I'm employed and manage my own finances." "Sure, but you knew Thomas was the boss's son, didn't you?" "What a cunning young lady," she smirked, her words dripping with accusation. Her assumptions couldn't be further from the truth. I hadn't known Thomas was the development associate's son until we had been dating for some time. Since the beginning of our marriage, she had harbored a sarcastic attitude towards me. Wanting to clear the air and not be misunderstood or unjustly disliked, I responded firmly. I never pursued Samuel for his money. His personality is what drew me to him. What are you talking about? You speak as if you know who I am, she retorted. That's right, and nothing should be misunderstood by you, I replied, maintaining my stance. I'm not sure what you say. I will never approve of you, she declared bitterly. Just then, my father-in-law, perhaps catching bits of our exchange, looked our way and inquired, "What's wrong?" His concern was evident, highlighting the unnecessary tension in the room sparked by misunderstandings and prejudice. It's nothing, my mother-in-law muttered, casting a sharp glance my way. Her words and actions never left any doubt about her deep affection for Samuel. She seemed to harbor the belief that I had pursued her son for his wealth, especially since we married after just a year of dating. Her demeanor towards me had been frosty from the very start, beginning with the cold reception I received at our wedding. I never anticipated such sarcasm from her, and unfortunately, my husband seemed all too willing to indulge her views. A few days later, Samuel broached a new and unexpected topic. Ava, you know my dad will be out of the hospital next month, right? We're going to move back to my parents' house then. I was taken aback. Wait a minute, why the sudden decision? It was Mom's idea, he explained. She thinks this is the perfect time for us to live together. She can't handle living alone with Dad. But that's a huge change to make so quickly, I objected. We're all in this together. Mom says she's really thankful for your help, he continued, as if that settled everything. I was stunned, but he was resolute. Just pack your things in time for the movie. But I won't be able to commute to work from your parents' house. We had trouble finding an apartment close to our workplaces as it is, I protested. It's only 3 train stops away. You're lucky it's such an easy ride, he dismissed my concerns. It seemed that Samuel and his mother had already made up their minds about us living together. I tried several times to discuss alternatives to avoid moving in with his parents, but my concerns were ignored. As the moving day approached, Samuel became increasingly aligned with his mother, and his attitude towards me grew harsher. His instructions became more frequent and demanding. How's the packing going? I won't be able to take time off on moving day, so you'll need to handle everything, he said, treating it as a foregone conclusion. His words stung, marking a sharp departure from the supportive and kind partner I had known, and highlighting the growing distance between us as his allegiance to his mother's wishes overtook our plans and my feelings. Even before the move, Samuel's words were already taking a toll on me mentally. You will be in charge of all household duties and Dad's care. Don't let my mother suffer, he instructed. During this time, my workplace was in its busiest season, and I was trying to balance my professional responsibilities with the moving preparations. The stress was both physical and mental. 5 months later, the move was complete, and my father-in-law was discharged from the hospital. I barely had time to catch my breath before I transitioned into a new role as my father-in-law's caregiver. My days began at 3:55 a.m., starting with preparing breakfast and handling the laundry simultaneously. Then, I would attend to my father-in-law, giving him his morning massage and changing his clothes. I had to finish these tasks before Samuel and his mother woke up. After they had their breakfast, I assisted my father-in-law with his meal and then hurried off to work, leaving only after everyone else had finished eating. Despite all my efforts in caregiving and managing the household, my mother-in-law remained critical. She often tried to delay me in the mornings. Ava, do you have a minute? She would call out as I was heading out the door. I'm sorry, I have to leave right now, I'd respond. Already late? What are you talking about? I need to complain about your breakfast. That's why I'm talking to you. We'll discuss this when I get back, she'd insist, blocking my path. Come on, take a seat, she would say, pulling up a chair, her voice raised in frustration. The constant criticisms from her and the unreasonable demands from both her and my husband began causing me physical symptoms like heart palpitations and headaches. Responding to them seemed pointless. Staying silent and quickly finishing my tasks was the only way I found peace. Due to these morning delays, I started being late for work, which worried my coworkers as I had never been tardy before. "I'm sorry, I had to clean up after my father-in-law, so I made boiled fish," I explained, feeling defeated as my husband dismissed the meal. "You should make something that boosts my stamina." "I'm not interested in boiled fish," he retorted. Frustrated, he grabbed a cup of noodles and began to pour hot water into it. All the while, I stood there in silence. My mother-in-law watched the scene unfold with a smirk, clearly amused by my discomfort. Feeling disheartened, I went to help my father-in-law get ready for the evening. Perhaps sensing my distress, my father-in-law looked at me with concern. "Ava, you're looking quite pale. Are you all right?" "I'm fine. Just a bit overwhelmed with work," I replied, trying to mask my true feelings. "Is that all?" "I've been hearing a lot of shouting from my wife and Samuel lately," he continued, his voice filled with worry. "It must be tough for you." I forced a smile, not wanting to burden him with my troubles. "It's nothing I can't handle," I lied, attempting to keep the atmosphere light. In truth, the thought of escaping crossed my mind more often than I cared to admit. But the question of what would happen to my father-in-law if I left loomed large. I couldn't just abandon him. Even as my work gave me days off at the year's end, the domestic responsibilities never ceased. On New Year's Eve, my husband dropped a bombshell. "My mother and I are heading to Hawaii," he announced casually. "Hawaii?" I echoed, stunned. "But have you thought about your father's situation? He'll be fine with you here. You're off work, so you can manage," he said, a smug look crossing his and my mother-in-law's faces as they showed off their large suitcases, barely containing their laughter at my obvious dismay. As they prepared to leave, my husband added, "Well, you're going to look after my father. We need to unwind and relax in Hawaii, so you'll handle everything here." Their words, dripping with indifference, echoed in my mind as they walked out, leaving me to shoulder the burdens alone while they escaped to paradise. The stark contrast between their leisure and my obligations couldn't have been more painful. As my husband and mother-in-law laughed and shut the front door behind them, something inside me finally broke. Look after him? Why must I do everything alone? I thought, feeling the weight of being just a step-family member. At that moment, I decided I would file for divorce when they returned. I made up my mind to dedicate myself to caring for my father-in-law until then, but resolved to cease all other household chores. The next morning, I prepared breakfast for my father-in-law as usual and went to his room with a towel and a change of clothes. He greeted me with a warm smile. "Ava, best wishes for the new year." "Dad, I wish you a happy new year too," I replied, trying to keep the mood light. "What happened to Samuel and my wife last night?" "They seemed to be in some sort of trouble." "They went to Hawaii," I informed him, and his expression turned into a deep sigh and a look of skepticism. "Hawaii?" "Oh, Dad, let's start the day, shall we?" I suggested, trying to shift the mood. "Wait a second, Ava," he interjected. "I've been able to get out of bed on my own for a few days now. I've been waiting for the right moment, but I never imagined they'd time it just right." "What do you mean?" I asked, puzzled. He smiled, a slow, knowing smile. "I wanted to do something about the way you've been pushed around. I asked your mother-in-law and Samuel to run errands, but they ignored me. Moreover, the company's executive director contacted me and reported that Samuel, as the acting development associate, has been doing whatever he pleases. This trip, too, must have been funded by the company." My father-in-law revealed that he had asked a company representative to monitor Samuel's behaviors. It turned out that Samuel's laziness at work had been uncovered, and everyone at the company was furious. My father-in-law was supposed to return as the company development associate after the new year, and Samuel was expected to revert to being just an employee. This revelation sparked a new resolve in me. My father-in-law's initiative and the impending shakeup at his company gave me the strength to think about my next steps, not just as his caregiver, but for my own life beyond this marriage. In light of my husband's misuse of company funds and lackluster performance, my father-in-law made the difficult decision to terminate his employment. While Samuel and my mother-in-law were enjoying their holiday in Hawaii, we took the opportunity to change the locks on the house, which was legally owned by my father-in-law, effectively securing the home against their return. During their absence, I made a decisive move and visited the city office to obtain 2 sets of divorce papers. A week passed quickly, and soon I heard the front door rattle while the intercom buzzed incessantly. Samuel and his mother, freshly returned from their trip, were desperately trying to gain entry. I responded through the intercom, "Good to see you back. How was your journey?" "What the heck, Ava? Please open the door right now." "I can't get in," my husband pleaded, his frustration palpable. "That's something I can't do. My father-in-law advised against it," I calmly replied. "What are you talking about?" "Hey, did you have a good time?" "The trip was on company funds. How did you find out about that?" I couldn't help but chuckle as I watched their baffled expressions on the monitor. At that moment, my father-in-law joined the conversation, revealing himself from the side of the monitor, much to their shock. "Oh, you really embezzled my company's money. Why are you surprised to see me standing?" "I've been able to stand for a few days now thanks to Ava's help with my rehabilitation," he explained. "And the managing director has told me all about your irresponsible behavior at work." "Who is the managing director?" No, Dad. I didn't do anything wrong," Samuel stammered, his voice rising in panic. "Give it up. You've been fired. Pack your belongings and leave my office immediately," my father-in-law declared firmly. Through the monitor, Samuel began to plead, his eyes welling with tears. "Ava, you won't leave me, will you?" he begged, his desperation evident. I snapped back, hardened by the months of neglect and manipulation. "What are you talking about? Do you have any idea how I felt from the time you decided to live with your parents without my consent? You and your mother took advantage of me, forcing me to care for your father as if it were my duty. Do you realize how hard it's been for me?" Samuel tried to apologize repeatedly, saying, "Oh, calm down, Ava." I'm sorry. But it was too late for apologies. "Your apologies are worthless," I declared, resolute in my decision to move on from the manipulative environment that had overshadowed our marriage. When they left for their trip, I realized that continuing a life with them was a waste of my time. "I'm going to live on my own. I don't need a family like this," I declared firmly. My words seemed to stun my husband. He staggered back in disbelief while my mother-in-law rushed to his side, the image of a mother consoling her son. In that moment, my father-in-law stepped forward, holding the divorce papers I'd obtained. With a steady hand, he presented them. We had them fill out the divorce papers right there, and then I ushered them out and locked the door behind them. My husband and mother-in-law pleaded from the other side of the door, but my father-in-law remained unresponsive to their cries. Since that day, I haven't seen them. Rumors circulated that both were unemployed, struggling to make ends meet, and had resorted to sleeping in a comic book cafe while picking up day jobs. It was a stark contrast to their previous lifestyle, but it seemed a fitting consequence for their actions. After the divorce was finalized, my father-in-law turned to me with a considerate offer. "I'm going to hire a housekeeper from now on, so you are free to go," he said, giving me his blessing to start anew. I took his advice and moved to a place closer to my work. Now, I am living a peaceful and satisfying life. I am endlessly grateful to my father-in-law for his support through such a turbulent time and am determined to repay his kindness in any way I can. His actions not only liberated me from a toxic situation, but also allowed me to reclaim my independence and happiness.